Hello guys, it's Jozy here, back again with another video. Now I've closed over 100 clients for my own agency, and I wanted to do a quick video on the sales mistakes I've learned during the whole way of me taking, I'll say 800 to maybe 900 plus sales calls throughout my whole, for even a whole year. Yes, a lot. But I wanted to do a quick video going over all the mistakes I've done and how I learned past them by, of course, hiring a few sales coaches, really looking back at my calls. So you can use the same, you can avoid all these mistakes and then actually close more deals as you guys are jumping on SMMA calls or calls for your agency, basically trying to sign more clients on them. Right? So without further ado, the first thing I want to talk about is taking control of the call. Now, especially in the discovery call phase, this is what I was lacking the most. So I'll jump on the call, right? And the prospects will be there. And some prospects will have a bit more ego than other prospects, but some prospects will jump on the call and they'll start asking me questions, especially in the first part of the discovery call. Now, if you know anything about sales, you always want to be the one asking questions, and this used to derail the call a lot, right? So the one thing I've done to actually avoid that is firstly ask the first question, like, hey, where are you calling from? Especially in the rapport phase. And then when it comes to discovery phase, just really set in the frame. Like, hey, these are the calls work. The first 24 minutes is going to sound a bit like a police interrogation. And we're going to go through in terms of your agency, where you are right now, where you want to be in the next 6 months. And if at the end of the call, I really feel I can help you, then explain to you every single thing that we do. Guarantee X, Y, Z, right? And this allowed me not only to take control of the call, but actually get into the right frame for myself, the right mood, really, of like, hey, I am the one in the authority and the project here needed my help, okay? Then also, another mistakes I've seen other people do is if you have prospects that talk too much, right? So let's say you're asking them a question and they start blabbering things on, like, hey, let's say, where do you want to do in the next 6 months, right? What's the goal of the business? Then they start talking to you about their life goal, their life mission, everything like that, blabbering on. And they're just being innocent. Some people know that they're doing it. Some people are not even, like, they're so used to talking a lot about themselves that they don't realize they're doing it. But this can cut so many minutes off the call, right? And let's say the call is only 45 minutes to an hour. You want to make sure that you're done with the discovery call in 24 to 20 minutes, around then, because then you can use the rest of the time to pitch, handle objections, everything like that, right? And you letting a prospect talk too much is just wasting time on the call, because the first sentence or first 2 sentences that they said, you could have got everything that you needed and then move forward with the other questions. So what I've been doing, especially in that part of the call, is just saying, hey, let's say they're speaking, I'll wait for a pause in between their speech and just say, hey, really great point. I remember you said X, Y, Z and X, Y, Z. I just had a question about X, Y, Z, right? And then this allows me not only to keep track of the call, make sure we finish on time, and make sure we have especially a bit more time to handle the objections, right? Because you're going to get them nearly every single call. So you want to make sure that you have time to handle the objections so the prospect can't say, hey, I need to shift to another call, right? Then the next thing is not asking strategic questions. Now, there's 2 phases that this falls into. Is the discovery call phase primarily, and also the objection handling phase / the pitch answering phase, right? Now, in the discovery call phase, you want to make sure that all the questions that you ask are necessary. You don't want to ask unnecessary questions, only because the questions that you actually are going to ask, you're going to use them as ammo to close the prospect, right? So let's say you're asking them, hey, what do you want to do with the business in the next 6 months? They give you the answer. It's like, okay, how long do you want to wait until you actually have to fix this problem? And they say ASAP, and it's like, okay, why ASAP? Why is this important to you now instead of waiting an extra 6 to 9 months? Then they give you all the points of why it's important to them now. So let's say if they say, I need to think about it, you can then use that again as ammo to reinstate, hey, earlier in the call you said that X, Y, Z, right, is the only thing that's making this an urgent problem. Why you want to delay it for an extra 6 to 9 months, right? So you can ask that in the first part of the discovery call, which are basically most of the discovery call scripts that you can get online. We usually have that. But the next part, which is my favorite part, is the objection phase and answering questions from the pitch. Okay. And now in this objection phase, you want to use strategic question to really understand what's the main concern, right? If, for example, let's say a client comes into you and they say, hey, Josiah, I just don't think I have the money. I just think it's expensive. You can say, hey, when you say it's expensive, does that mean that it's more than you thought, or it's more than you have available, right? Because it's 2 things. Maybe they're comparing the price to, let's say, other competitors, or they actually don't have the money. Because you can use them strategic question to really understand and discern what the prospect is saying. So it can actually guide you to really find out what's the main objection. Especially when it comes to objection handling, finding out what the true objection is going to help you so much on handling that, so you can start closing the deal and actually start moving the prospect down the sales funnel. Okay, so asking strategic question is key. Now, I'll say the biggest takeaway I'll say from asking strategic question is actually just listening to the prospect, right? And it is trial and error, because you're going to ask some stupid questions, then you're going to ask some really good questions, then you actually find out what the good questions are, right? But listening to the prospect kind of gives you a good feel in terms of where you should go. Another thing is actually holding prospects accountable to the higher self. So let's say they kept talking about how they want to make 50K per month. Then you can say, hey, would you be more or less likely getting to 50K a month if you did nothing today, right? Or if you at least took action today in order to get to that 50K per month? Which one would you be more or less likely to, which one would be more likely to help you get to that 50K per month goal? No action or action? Then of course they're going to say action. That's of course a strategic question that I just done off the top of my head, but strategic questions as a whole allows you not only to discern what the prospect is saying, right, but actually gives you a North Star in how to handle the objection, right? The next thing is using the strategic question to get targeted conviction. Now, before on my sales calls, I used to jump on the sales calls, especially in the objection handling phase, I'll be putting my whole heart out saying, hey, this is the best thing for you. Of course, we're going to help you get to 50K per month. I promise you X, Y, Z, and really using a lot of energy. But the main thing about that I realized is that when you have 9 calls and you're trying to use energy, and really trying to like blast all that energy out of you, on the 6th call that you have, let's say in that day, you're going to be so worn out, right? You're going to be so drained because you've used all your energy, units of energy on calls, or that A wasn't going to close, but B doesn't actually move the needle forward, right? So what I like to do is ask a lot of strategic questions to find out, especially in the objection handling phase, what's their main concern. So for example, let's say someone says, hey, Josiah, I'm concerned about lead quality, all right? Instead of me just saying, okay, lead quality, and then going through a whole spiel saying, oh, we do this, do that, so you don't have to worry about lead quality, just say, hey, like, what are you concerned about lead quality? Okay, and what about lead quality is really concerning you? Okay, and what would you say is a qualified lead? Okay, and anything else that's kind of concerning about lead quality, or is it just the main things? Okay, so you're saying that your qualified lead is XYZ. The main concern about lead quality is making sure that the lead have enough money and they're the right people. And of course, they're in the United States, right? So do you mind if I show you how we will fix that to make sure every single lead that you speak to is qualified so you can still to that 50K per month? Would that be something you'd be open to? Then they say yes, get permission, and then I'll use that to give a targeted conviction response, right? And that targeted conviction will be showing them, not telling them, right? I'll be showing them, of course, how we help them with lead quality. I will also make sure that all of our clients, you can add a bit of case study, but you want to keep this a bit short and concise. You don't want to over blab, and then you want to end it off with this. I will make sure that every single lead that we get to is qualified, it is going to get to that 50K per month, and I can reassure you that. And then end off with just a pulse check. Does that give you more confidence, or does that make you feel a bit more secure about the lead quality? Then from them, if they say, hey, yes, if they give you a strong yes, then of course move on. But if they give you like a shaky yes, like, hey, I don't feel 100% sold, so like, honestly, I'm just here to help you. What about this? This is actually kind of like holding you or making you feel a bit hesitant. And then they can actually double down like, hey, this part is actually, I don't really understand that part, X, Y, Z. And then you use that information to then answer that question, okay? Now, this is literally putting what a lot of salespeople do on his head, because a lot of salespeople just, as soon as the prospect gives you a concern, they go straight into like defensive war mode, instead of really trying to understand and get into the root deal or root cause of that concern, and then handling there and then. And especially when you're just taking calls back to back, this can help you so much when it comes to making sure that the prospect feels like they've been heard, making sure that you're a collaborative closer instead of just like a pushy closer, right? And this is also going to help you save you so much time, so much energy in the objection handling phase, right? Because you're not actually fighting and trying to like pull the prospect by his hair into your program or service. You're actually just trying to say, hey, how can we actually help you, right? And making sure the prospect feels that confidence and that kind of conviction from you, and makes it, and they feel like, hey, they've actually been heard. That's the main thing that I want to kind of stress out to you. Okay, so the next thing is not using empathy in your calls. Now, this, if not, is one of the most, I used to struggle with this a lot, right? And I used to jump on calls and prospect will tell me like, oh, I've just been burnt by this agency and I've spent, like, say 15K, and I'll be, okay, no worries. And then just carry on with the objection handling. Now that is, if not the worst thing you can do to a prospect. It's literally like your guy drives, right? Your guy is driving and he gets into a car crash and then he's telling you, hey, I just got into a car crash. You're like, hey, no worries, man. But anyways, what are you doing for the weekend, right? He just told you he got into a car crash, right? So in that place, I had to change, especially, and this took me so long to work on, but I had to change how I viewed the prospects, right, on the call. And if you actually care about them, if you actually like client focus, this will come very naturally, right? And you have to just emphasize with them, like, hey, like speak to them on a human level. If they've been burned by another agency or another provider, right? Say, hey man, I completely understand. Like even tell them I'm so sorry for this happening to you, right? And just even share some personal stories. Like I love to share personal stories on the call because it builds that connection. Like I know because I've spent money on masterminds, spent over like 25K and it didn't work out for me, right? And so you even coming on this call, I actually applaud you because it shows that you have guts and this is a very big problem. So I completely understand. Like what didn't work for you? And then give you the specifics what didn't work, right? And a lot of people miss this key fact because they just focus on the money, right? When you're doing the prospect, they actually focus on the money instead of actually helping the prospect and actually seeing if they're a good fit for what they do, right? And this is key. If you focus just more on the prospect, you will make more money than just focusing on the money, right? That's the main thing because especially when you speak to more sophisticated buyers, they know the sales game. They know they've been on so many calls, they're selling themselves, right? So they know exactly what you're doing, right? But if you speak to them more of like an unfiltered level, like that energy just comes across so raw on the call and prospects feel that energy coming across, okay? So really, the cool things about empathy, I'll say big tips on empathy is seeing the prospect as more of a friend that you're looking to help, right? Especially when they give you something that's very kind of deep, right? Also softening your tone to make it look like, hey, tonality wise that you actually care about the prospect, and B, just really understanding their emotions, like, and really understanding how the prospect feels in that moment. So like active listening to them, okay? Because if you can really understand how the prospect feels and just describe it to them, they're just gonna feel so close to you. They're gonna feel like, hey, I can really trust the person. And as soon as they feel like that they can trust you, they will tell you what the real objection is. And once the prospect tells you what the real objection is, and that's the only objection you have to handle, that gets 10 times easier, okay? Now, another thing as well is not using enough analogies, case studies, and stories in the objection handling phase, right? Especially this is literally key. It is like one of the biggest things about persuasion, right? So instead of like driving a point home and just talking about point, just show them, right? This is how let's say the lead quality, show them how your lead quality system works. Show them case studies of people having amazing lead quality, people that are booking calls with, let's say, multi-million-dollar companies if you have so, right? And then also, let's say if you don't agree with the prospect's way of thinking, just give them an analogy, right? And I love to use analogy. And the biggest thing I'll say about analogy and stories, you don't really need to practice them on the call. The best way to practice them is outside of the call. Let's say with like your friends or like your girlfriend or like your family members or like friends, anything like that. Practice analogies, right? Give your point, but then practice a normal day analogy. Like, you know, for example, I don't know, I make analogies off my head usually, but a good analogy could be, hey, let's say, I like dating analogies in my opinion. I love dating analogies. It's like, for example, it's like going and pitching the prospect straight away is like going to a girl and asking them, hey, can we go straight to bed, right? Isn't gonna work, right? And we wanna use analogies of everyday life, right? So like, let's say a good one, it could be driving, could be dating, could be family occasions, could be, let's say, school, like things that you've done in school, right? Any everyday thing that people do, right? It's a good way for you to use analogy, right? So for example, if someone's never done things in the past, you can say, hey, it's almost like swimming. Like, have you ever like swum before, right? Do you know the first time you go swimming and you're like in the water and you're just like so scared and you're just so nervous, right? Because the water looks deeper than it actually is. And you don't know if you're even gonna drown and X, Y, Z. Like, have you ever had that feeling? Yeah, it's the same thing like when actually sign up with a new vendor that you never done before. Like at first it seems so scary, like you don't know, it's like the fear of the unknown. You don't know what's gonna happen, you don't know how it's gonna look like. But at the end of the day, once you go into the pool, you realize A, it's not actually that deep, and B, you've got the wristbands, the inflatables that's actually gonna keep you afloat. The same thing here, we got everything in place to make sure that you have the wristbands, you have the inflatables, that we're actually gonna walk you through each and every single step to get to that 50K per month. Right? Again, that's another analogy you can use. And you want to get into a habit of just making so many analogies every single day that they just fly naturally, right? Another thing you can do as well is when you're on the call, you want to make sure that you have, let's say, a slide. And on that slide, actually tells you, hey, and it actually reminds you, use analogies, use stories, use case studies, because if you just stack them up again and again, A, is going to give you more time to actually think of how to handle the objection or to really feel the call, and B, is going to make you more articulate. It's going to help you persuade the another prospect to say, hey, like, I actually believe that you can actually help me. And usually use this as tools in your toolbox, right? To get the prospect over the line. So let's do just a quick recap on everything that we covered. So the first thing is taking control of the call, of the discovery call, the objection handling phase. Number 2 is asking strategic questions, really discern what's going on in the conversation. Number 2 is using targeted conviction instead of raw conviction, right? Finding out what the prospect really wants, getting clear on that, and then show and not tell them. The next thing is using empathy, right? So using empathy to emphasize with the prospect to lower their barrier so they can actually trust you more, tell you the real actual objection. And the last thing is using analogies and stories to really drive the point home, get them to come into your side, persuade them, and get them to close. All right? Now, this is all I've learned for closing over 100 plus clients. So hopefully you can use this, avoid the mistakes I've done, scaling your agency. But if you need any help in doing that, of course, there's a link below. But aside from that, have a nice rest of the day. Take care. Bye.